My wife's secret affair was exposed when I walked into the resort she booked with her lover and handed her divorce papers. I'm in the middle of one of the worst experiences of my life, coming to terms with the fact that my marriage has been built on nothing but lies. For the past few months, I've been obsessively reading through relationship subreddits, trying to recognize the warning signs of a crumbling marriage. The more I read, the more I started noticing subtle changes in behavior that I had brushed off before. Eventually, all those little details pieced themselves together, leading me to a harsh reality: my wife isn't the person I thought she was, and maybe she never was. I spent years believing we had something rare, something different from everyone else. But now, I see the truth. I was just another fool, blinded by love and naive to the signs staring me right in the face. Nina and I have been married for nearly 6 years. We met in a way that felt like it was straight out of a rom-com at a Best Buy while I was picking out parts for a custom PC build. She walked up looking a little lost in the monitor section, probably overwhelmed by the endless options in front of her. Meanwhile, I had 5 different spec sheets spread out, trying to compare every little detail. She must have figured I knew what I was doing because she struck up a conversation, and just like that, we hit it off. Turns out, she was working on her first gaming setup, and I helped her pick out the perfect monitor. One thing led to another, and we ended up grabbing coffee afterward, talking nonstop about our shared love for technology. She was a software developer, and I was working in IT at the time, so we had plenty of common ground. Things escalated quickly after that. We dated for 3 years, moved in together, and even adopted a cat. When I finally proposed, it was during a weekend trip to Seattle, right in the middle of a gaming convention, fitting for the two of us. Our wedding was exactly what we wanted: small, intimate, and perfect. But now, looking back, all those memories feel like scenes from a movie I convinced myself was real. Like I was living in some kind of dream where everything seemed perfect, only to wake up and realize it was all just an illusion. Nina has 2 best friends, Melanie and Camille, who she's been close to since college. The 3 of them are practically glued together: weekly video calls, trips, celebrating every major milestone as a group. Over the years, I got to know them well enough, and while I wouldn't call them my own close friends, we always got along just fine. Since they were both married, we'd sometimes hang out as couples, and they were there for all our big life moments: our engagement party, our housewarming, everything. The first time something felt off was the day I came home from work earlier than usual. I walked in to find Nina on a video call with Melanie and Camille. She was sitting in our home office, but the second she noticed me, her entire vibe shifted. It wasn't just a subtle change either. Her body language stiffened, and her voice suddenly took on this weird, overly casual tone that felt completely unnatural. Normally, she's relaxed and open when talking to them, but this time? It was different. Suspicious, even. I tried to make a joke, asking what they were chatting about, but she waved me off with some vague answer about weekend plans. It was like she couldn't end the conversation fast enough. That alone would have been enough to set off alarm bells, but what really got me was what happened after I left the room. Something about her reaction bugged me, so I hovered near the office door for a moment, just listening. That's when I heard it, her whispering. Now, anyone who knows Nina knows she doesn't whisper. She's loud, animated, always the one leading the conversation. So why was she suddenly being so secretive? The bits and pieces I caught didn't make sense. They were talking about some trip, and I kept hearing mentions of he and him. That immediately put me on edge. I already knew about their upcoming girls' trip to Cabo. They'd been planning it for weeks. It wasn't anything unusual. Every year, the 3 of them took a big trip together. Last summer it was Vegas. The year before that it was a ski trip in Colorado. Nothing about it had ever seemed suspicious before. At one point, I even considered tagging along since I had some vacation days saved up, but the second I brought it up, Nina got weird about it. She went on about how it was a tradition for it to be a girls-only thing, so I didn't push it. Besides, I was swamped at work anyway with a major server migration project coming up. But now, listening to her hushed conversation, something didn't add up. The way they were talking about this trip didn't sound like their usual carefree planning. And the mention of some guy? That sent a cold knot of dread straight into my gut. After the call ended, she came out of the office acting completely different, extra affectionate, hugging me from behind while I worked, kissing me more than usual. On the surface, it might have seemed sweet, but I knew her too well. This wasn't normal. It reminded me of how she acted last year when we hit a rough patch, when she was spending way too much time at work with her new project team. Back then, she'd stay late at the office, and when she came home, she'd go overboard with the affection, almost like she was trying to make up for something. I had checked her phone before when things fell off, back during that work phase when she was getting messages at odd hours. But I never found anything suspicious. This time, though? This time felt different. We've always shared our phone passwords. It started as a practical thing, being able to access each other's phones in case of emergencies, and over the years, it just became normal. When you've been with someone for nearly a decade, you develop an instinct. You know when something is wrong. And right now? Everything about this felt wrong. So, while she was in the shower, I picked up her phone and went straight to her messages with Melanie and Camille. Normally, their group chat was filled with memes, inside jokes, and the usual complaints about their husbands. But this time, it was different. Instead of talking about their trip, the messages were all about her trip. That tiny shift in wording sent a chill down my spine. The texts were full of excited emojis and comments that made my stomach churn. He's going to love that new bikini. Make sure to take lots of pictures for us. It didn't sound like three married women planning a simple girls' getaway. It sounded like a group of giddy high schoolers sneaking around. And then, I found the worst part. Buried between their usual conversations about work and daily life were messages about someone named Calvin. At first, I had no idea who he was. But then, I saw the photos. A guy tall, good-looking in that effortless way, like he could be the poster boy for a dating app posing shirtless by a lake. Then another picture, one that nearly made me sick. It was Nina. Sitting next to him. His arm draped casually around her at what looked like a restaurant. The timestamp? Just 2 weeks ago. The same night she told me she was out with her work friends. His name was Calvin. And somehow, this guy had been part of my wife's life for who knows how long, without me having the slightest clue. As I scrolled through the messages, it became painfully clear that Melanie and Camille weren't just aware of what was going on, they were actively encouraging it. The chat was full of their excited comments about how good Nina and Calvin looked together, how perfect this trip was going to be. At one point, Melanie even wrote, "You two are going to have the best time," complete with about 20 heart emojis. That same Melanie had been sitting across from me at our dinner table just last weekend, laughing at my jokes, acting completely normal. All the while, she knew my wife was planning a romantic getaway with another man. It hit different. Finding out your wife is cheating is one thing. But discovering she was openly planning an entire vacation with him, complete with fancy dinners, couples massages, and a luxury suite with connecting rooms? That felt like a whole new level of betrayal. I couldn't read another word. I put her phone back exactly where I found it, grabbed my keys, and just drove. I had no destination in mind, just needed to get away, clear my head. For about an hour, I aimlessly circled the neighborhood, my mind racing with everything I had just seen. When I finally made it back home, Nina was waiting, worried. She asked where I had gone, why I left so suddenly. Said I never just take off without saying anything. I lied. Told her I had a stressful call with a client and just needed to step out for some air. She believed me. We even sat down to watch TV together like nothing had changed, like my world hadn't just been ripped apart. She cuddled up next to me, resting her head on my shoulder. Meanwhile, I was sitting there, scrolling through my phone, reading up on divorce laws. I knew I had to end things. There was no coming back from this. But walking away felt too easy. If I just left, she'd move on without a second thought. Hell, she'd probably move Calvin into our house before I even had my stuff packed. I needed to know who this guy was. With nothing but his first name and the city where they met, I started digging online, scouring social media. I wasn't just looking for information, I wanted leverage. Something to make sure neither of them walked away from this without consequences. Because this wasn't just Nina betraying me, it was all of them. Her so-called friends, the ones who sat at my table, drank my beer, acted like family. They had helped her plan this. Then someone on Reddit threw out an idea. Show up at their little romantic getaway. At first, it sounded insane. Spend thousands on last-minute flights and a hotel just to confront them? But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I had all the details right there in their chat, the resort name, the room reservations, even their planned itinerary. If I played it right, I could walk right up to them, divorce papers in hand, and make sure Nina knew exactly what she had just thrown away. Yeah, it would be expensive. Flights, hotels, lawyer fees, it would all add up fast. But seeing their faces when I walked up to them at that resort? That would be worth every single penny. Update: the plan was set. Looking back, the past 2 weeks have felt like something straight out of one of those revenge movies I used to think were so over the top and unrealistic. Turns out, they're not. It all started the night I discovered my wife was planning a romantic trip with her affair partner while lying to my face about it being a girls' trip. People online had warned me. There were countless stories about these girls' trips being a cover for something else, but I never thought Nina would do that to me. We had even been talking about starting a family next year. But instead of confronting her, I played it smart.
I kept everything exactly the same. I didn't let on that I knew. We still ate dinner together every night, watched our usual shows, had normal conversations. Hell, I even helped her pack for the trip. She showed me their group chat, spa appointments, beachside drinks, cute little brunch spots. All lies. Meanwhile, I was working with a divorce lawyer and booking my own flight to Cabo. My lawyer and I spent hours making sure every single detail was airtight. He made sure we had everything documented, proof of the affair, records of their travel plans, even screenshots of the money she had spent on the trip. Then he gave me some final advice: record everything. The last-minute plane ticket cost damn near as much as our honeymoon. Didn't matter. I pulled from our emergency savings, seemed appropriate, given that this was definitely an emergency. I even booked a room at the same resort. Different floor, thankfully. D-Day, the airport goodbye. The morning of her flight, I played the role of the perfect husband. I drove her to the airport, carried her bags, kissed her goodbye like nothing was wrong. Watched her walk through security in her new beach dress and the expensive sun hat I had bought for her birthday. I looked around, trying to spot Calvin. Nothing. He was probably on a separate flight to keep up the girls' trip charade. While I waited for my own flight later that evening, Nina kept texting me. She sent pictures of her ocean view room, the infinity pool, little updates about how she missed me already. Each message only fueled me more. That night, I checked into the resort. Barely slept. Just lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything we'd been through, the way we met, our first apartment, all those little moments leading up to this. The divorce papers sat in my backpack, waiting. My lawyer had gone over everything, making sure it was legally sound, that she wouldn't be able to contest anything. He even made sure the financial records showed how our money had been used to fund this affair. All I had to do now was find them together. The confrontation. The next morning, I texted her. Played it cool. Asked about her plans for the day. She responded almost instantly, sent a poolside selfie, said she'd be sunbathing before heading into town with the girls. She even mentioned which pool she was at. The main one, near the lobby. The one with the swim-up bar. That was all I needed. I grabbed my bag, slipped the divorce papers inside, and headed downstairs. And there they were. It took me seconds to spot them, far end of the pool deck. Nina, stretched out on a lounger, her new blue bikini on full display. The one she supposedly bought for her girls' trip. Next to her, Calvin. Relaxed. Comfortable. Rubbing sunscreen on her legs like they'd done this 100 times before. I felt my whole body go still. All those late nights she said she was working? The excuses, the weird behavior? It had all led to this. And now, it was time to make sure neither of them would ever forget it. All those nights she claimed she was working late or meeting up with friends, how many of them had really been spent with him? I pressed record on my phone, slid it into my shirt pocket, and took a deep breath. My lawyer had drilled it into me: if I could get proof, I should. And here I was, standing behind them, watching it all unfold in real time. Calvin glanced up at me once, briefly, but didn't register anything. Probably assumed I was just another resort guest. He kept his focus on Nina, casually chatting about their dinner plans for the night. She had her sunglasses on, head tilted back, stretched out on a lounger like she didn't have a single care in the world. Her husband was supposed to be home, grinding away at work. Instead, I was right there, watching her bask in the attention of another man. Then Calvin looked up again. This time, with mild irritation. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice clipped, like I was some nobody wasting his time. And that's when Nina finally noticed me. She shot up so fast she knocked over her drink. For a second, she just stared like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then she rubbed her eyes, almost as if checking to make sure I wasn't some heatstroke-induced hallucination. Her face said it all. She never expected me to find out, let alone show up here. Weeks of lies. Secret planning. Her friends covering for her. It was all about to come crashing down. I didn't say a word. Just pulled out the manila envelope and held it out. Her hand trembled as she took it. She already knew what it was. Just last month, we'd signed refinancing papers for our house. She recognized legal documents when she saw them. Calvin, on the other hand, decided to make himself a problem. He stood up, squared his shoulders, and puffed out his chest like that was supposed to intimidate me. I'd seen his type before, guys who think their size alone makes them dangerous. He was taller than me, sure. Didn't matter. Then he put his hand on my chest and gave me a little shove. Like I was in his way. Like I was the intruder here. Nina grabbed his arm, probably remembering how I'd handled that drunk guy who got aggressive with her outside a bar once. But Calvin? He wasn't backing down.
kept his hand on me, acting like he had the authority here.
And I reacted. I shoved him. Hard.
He stumbled backward, lost his footing, and in the most satisfying instant karma moment of my life, he tumbled over a lounge chair and crashed straight into the pool.
Silence. Then laughter. I couldn't help it. Seeing him flailing in the water, sputtering, looking like a wet, pissed-off cat? Perfect.
Around the pool, people started pulling out their phones.
Some were already recording. This was about to be someone's viral TikTok, and honestly? Good. Let the world see it.
Nina, meanwhile, was in full-on panic mode. She jumped up, eyes wide, and actually tried to hit me with the classic, "It's not what it looks like."
I had to laugh at that, too.
She was in a bikini at a couple's resort with a man rubbing sunscreen on her legs.
What exactly was it supposed to look like? I decided to twist the knife. "How are Melanie and Camille?" I asked, casually.
She flinched.
She knew damn well they weren't here.
They were back home, probably sitting at their desks at work, pretending to be innocent while knowing full well they had helped her plan all of this. She fumbled for words, but I wasn't in the mood for any more lies. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope just enough to see the divorce papers inside. Then, as if closing it would somehow make them disappear, she shut it quickly and held it against her chest.
That's when the tears started.
Not the quiet, dignified kind. No, this was loud, ugly, attention-grabbing crying.
The kind that made people turn their heads. Calvin had pulled himself out of the pool by then, dripping wet and absolutely furious. He looked like he was about to charge at me, but before he could, a few guys from a nearby cabana stepped in. One of them muttered something about security being on the way. That was my cue.
I turned and walked off, not bothering to look back. Nina tried to follow me, still clutching the divorce papers, but she froze the second I turned and met her gaze.
She knew.
There was nothing she could say to fix this.
The aftermath. Back in my room, I packed my bag. Fast.
The front desk staff looked a little nervous when I checked out early, probably already heard about what went down at the pool, but they didn't ask questions.
Just called a taxi. Less than 30 minutes.
That's how fast it happened.
I was in and out of that resort like a hurricane. Then came the airport.
I spent 6 hours at the bar near my gate, nursing overpriced coffee, replaying the video I'd recorded over and over.
There they were. Clear as day. My wife and her boyfriend, at a luxury resort we couldn't even afford on our combined income. The timestamp? Ironclad proof for the divorce proceedings.
The whole trip cost me close to $3,000, flights, hotel, everything.
But seeing their faces? Worth every penny.
That night, back home, I turned off my phone and had the best sleep I'd had in months.
Nina's last attempt.
2 days later, she showed up at our house. Still in her beach clothes.
Hair a mess.
Dark circles under her eyes.
The second I opened the door, the waterworks started.
She needed to explain.
It wasn't what it looked like. Calvin was just a friend from work. Nothing serious happened.
Same weak excuses she had used before, back when she was staying late for work meetings. I told her to pack a bag and go to her sister's.
Her sister.
The one who had always given me strange looks at family gatherings, like she knew something I didn't.
Now, I understood why. That was the last time I saw her. Final update, it's over. After months of legal battles, it's done. The divorce is finalized. And me? I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. Finding out about Nina's affair shattered everything I thought I knew about our marriage.
But at least now, I know the truth.
And the best part?
I got to watch her perfect little plan fall apart in real time. The video of Calvin falling into the pool has become a fan favorite among my friends.
They won't stop playing it. I keep telling them to stop sharing it, but honestly, I don't really mind. Nina waited a full week before trying to reach out again.
She sent this long, dramatic text about how she needed space to think things through. Like she was the one who needed time to process everything. Her sister even called, saying Nina was going through something and needed understanding.
Understanding? No.
What she needed was a reality check.
And she got it.
The truth is, this betrayal wasn't just her.
It was all of them.
Melanie and Camille, her bridesmaids, helped her plan the whole romantic getaway. There was no coming back from that. Especially not after I saw them at that resort, acting like teenage lovers while I was supposed to be working overtime to pay for our new roof.
The divorce lawyer? A damn professional. Knew exactly how to handle everything. And now, I get to move on.
And they get to live with the consequences. The truth comes out. The video from the resort was ironclad. Nina, lounging poolside with another man, at a couple's resort, on what was supposed to be a girl's trip.
No excuses. No misunderstandings. Just cold, undeniable proof. And that was just the beginning. My lawyer dug deep. We had the screenshots from her group chat messages full of heart emojis and inside jokes about her secret getaway.
Then there were the financial records. A string of suspicious bank transactions that painted a picture I wished I'd never seen. There were Uber rides to neighborhoods where she had no reason to be. Restaurant charges way too high for just one person. Even a hotel booking from 3 months ago, the same weekend she told me she was at a work conference. Going through our finances was like peeling back layers of a lie I didn't even know I was living in. She had bought lingerie on days she told me she was shopping for work clothes. There were coffee shop receipts from places near Calvin's office.
And the one that hit the hardest?
A receipt from a jewelry store. She had bought Calvin a watch for his birthday while telling me she was picking up a gift for her dad. At that point, there was no sadness left in me. Just cold, clear realization. This marriage wasn't ending because of one mistake. This was who she was. The divorce. When it came to the settlement, things swung heavily in my favor.
At first, Nina's lawyer tried pushing for half of everything. Standard play.
But once we laid out the evidence, the Cabo trip, the hotel stays, the joint funds she had used to finance her affair, well, let's just say their strategy changed real quick.
We settled. I kept the house. Kept my car. She walked away with 30% of our savings, far less than she would have gotten under normal circumstances. The judge didn't take kindly to the fact that she had been dipping into our accounts to fund her affair. And the best part? I got to keep Derek.
Maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal, but to me, it was everything. I was the one who walked him every morning, took him to the vet, made sure he had his favorite treats. He was my dog, and I wasn't about to let her take him too.
Nina's parents find out. The moment word got out, the phone calls started. Her parents, who had treated me like family for nearly a decade, were blindsided. Her dad, who had always bragged about how I was the perfect match for his daughter, went completely silent. He had no words. Her mom? She tried to reason with me. Asked if I was sure about what I had seen. So I told her. I walked them through everything. The texts, the money, the weekend trips. Then, just to remove any doubt, I sent them the video. Silence. That was the moment they realized the truth. Their daughter had thrown it all away. Calvin's secret life. Once the dust settled, I turned my attention to Calvin. Didn't take much effort to track him down. A quick search through Nina's Facebook friends led me straight to him. A regional sales manager at a competing tech company. Married. With 2 kids. His profile was a joke. Family photos. Beach vacations. Little league games. Anniversary dinners. From the outside, his life looked perfect. White picket fence, happy wife, a house straight out of a Hallmark movie. And yet, that wasn't enough for him. It made a sick kind of sense that he and Nina had found each other, 2 people willing to risk everything just to chase something new. Telling his wife. I went back and forth on it. Thought about just walking away. But in the end, I knew she deserved to know. I sent her a message. Told her who I was. Attached the video from Cabo. Sent the screenshots from Nina's group chat. At first, she refused to believe it. Accused me of trying to stir up drama. Said I must have edited the video. So I let her talk. She told me about their 15-year marriage. Their kids. Their college funds. The house they built together. But then, as she started piecing things together, matching the dates of Calvin's business trips with the screenshots I sent, her tone changed. The shock turned into something else. Something colder. A week later, she messaged me again. She thanked me. Told me she had already contacted a divorce lawyer and moved in with her sister. Her marriage was over too. The aftermath. The fallout was brutal. But honestly, it was satisfying. Both of our marriages ended because 2 people couldn't keep their vows. That's on them. And Calvin? Well, let's just say his life took a nosedive. Somehow, the video of him getting shoved into the pool made its way onto social media. Did I have anything to do with that? I'll let you decide. His company's HR department definitely wasn't thrilled. A married regional sales manager, caught on camera, getting dunked at a couple's resort by an angry husband? Not the kind of PR they were looking for. I heard through mutual friends that he ended up moving to another state. Probably trying to outrun his own mess. As for Nina? She's been crashing at her sister's place, trying to find an apartment. Probably replaying every decision that led her here. She lost a stable marriage. She lost our dream house. She lost most of her savings. And for what?
Some temporary thrill with a guy who couldn't even hold his own life together.
The lesson here is simple. If you can't be faithful, don't get married. Because no matter how careful you think you are,
the truth always comes out in the end.